I watched Marlene Morrow cry on stage in front of 600 people, and not one of them knew it was real. Wait, I need you to understand something before I go any further. I knew. I was the only person in that room who knew those weren't performance tears, and I had exactly one song left to decide what to do about it. You ever carry something like that? A secret that isn't yours in a room full of strangers with a spotlight burning your face? That's where I was. The Ivory Room, Las Vegas. Last night of a 2-week residency I almost didn't survive. Let me back up 3 hours. Marlene showed up to sound check wearing the silver charm bracelet she never took off. Little charms, a piano, a star, a crescent moon, maybe 8 or 9 of them. But that afternoon, one loop was empty, one charm missing. I walked over. You ready for the big finish tonight, kid? She smiled, but it was tight. Born ready, Dean? I tilted my head. Yeah, you look like you haven't slept since Tuesday. She laughed too quick. A girl's allowed her secrets. I said, sure she is, long as those secrets don't walk on stage with her. She touched the bracelet, ran her thumb over the empty loop. It's nothing. I lost one of the charms, that's all. I didn't push. I should have. Write in the comments, where are you listening to this story from, and what time is it right now? Backstage, Lou was pacing. Sold out, Dino. Every seat. You know what that means? I straightened my tie. 600 people and one nervous manager. He jabbed his clipboard. Don't improvise. Stick to the set list. I said, Lou, when have I ever improvised? He stared. Atlantic City, Chicago. That thing in Reno. I held up my hands. Fair enough. Here's something I didn't understand until later. Marlene had turned down 3 bigger gigs for this residency. One was a network special. Her agent nearly quit. Why'd she pick 2 weeks with me? I'm going to tell you, not yet. First half was mine. Standards, a few jokes. The crowd was real warm. I was comfortable. If you know me, you know that's when things go sideways. During my last number, I spotted him. Table 12, stage left. A man alone. Gray suit, no drink, hands folded. Everyone around him was laughing. This guy was carved from granite. I kept singing. Marlene came on for the second half. We opened with a duet. She was perfect for the first verse, but notice she was standing 2 feet further from me than every other night. On a stage, 2 feet is a canyon. I moved toward her on the bridge. She stayed put. Her hands were shaking, just enough that the mic caught a tremor only I could hear. Stop for a second. Picture this room from above. Stage center, 2 singers. Table 12, 30 feet out. Security at the doors. 600 people, none of them knowing what's coming. We finished the duet. I leaned in. You okay, kid? She whispered without looking at me. Don't look at table 12, I whispered back. Too late. He's been staring at you like he owns the room. Who is he? She gripped the mic tighter. Someone I hoped would never find me. I said, you want me to have security move him out? She shook her head fast. No, don't. That would make it worse. Please, Dean, just sing. That word please wasn't a request. It was a prayer. I had 3 songs left, 3 songs to figure this out, while smiling for 600 people. Her solo came next. A ballad she'd owned every night. But tonight her voice cracked on the 3rd line, the kind only a singer catches, the throat closing because the body is fighting tears. A single tear caught the blue spotlight like a diamond. The room held its breath. No clink of glasses, no whisper, nothing, just her voice and that tear in the blue light. A woman in the front row grabbed her husband's arm. She's incredible. How does she do that? He said. Talent, honey, pure talent. They had no idea. Now here's the part I wrestled with. During intermission, I went to the bar. Sal, the bartender, leaned over. Mr. Martin, you see the guy at 12? I said. Hard to miss. You know him? Sal shook his head. Pays cash. Been here every night. Never orders a drink. Just watches Miss Morrow. I said, every night? He nodded. Every single one. Then Polly, a stagehand, grabbed my sleeve. Mr. Martin, someone left this at the stage door for Miss Morrow. Small white envelope. Not sealed. I opened it. Inside, a tiny silver charm shaped like a bird, and a note in block letters, E-T-A-T-A-T-A-T-A-T-A-T-A-T-A-T-H. Polly watched my face. Everything okay? I folded it shut. Fine, Polly. Don't mention this to her. He said, yes, sir. I put it in my jacket. She finished the solo. Standing ovation. She lifted her head and her eyes locked on table 12. The man was standing, not clapping. Then he walked toward the stage. The applause died in patches. The band trailed off. I stepped forward. I'm not a tough guy, but I put myself between Marlene and that edge. Hey, pal, I said, loud enough for the room? Show's not over. You want an autograph, you wait like a gentleman. The crowd laughed. He stopped, looked at me, past me, at Marlene, then reached into his jacket. My body went cold, but he pulled out a photograph, held it up for her. I couldn't see it, but I saw her face drain white. Security moved. Two guys walked him out the side door. He didn't fight. One of them came back and whispered from the stage edge, "We got him outside, Mr. Martin. Want us to call the police?" I said, "Just keep him out." He said he didn't have a weapon, just the photo. I nodded. I turned to Marlene. "He's gone, kid. It's handled." She let out a breath. "Thank you, Dean." The band kicked back in. I swung into an up-tempo number. By the chorus, people were smiling again. Crisis over. Listen, if that was everything, I'd have forgotten this night years ago. Halfway through the song, Lou appeared stage left with a face I'd never seen. He wasn't pacing. He was perfectly still. I caught his eye, and he mouthed two words. I read his lips 3 times before I believed them. Her daughter. I mouthed back, "What are you talking about?" He shook his head slow, mouthed it again. Her daughter? Marlene didn't have a daughter. That's what everyone believed. But Lou's face told me this was real. I finished the number, took my bow, and grabbed Lou backstage. The hallway smelled like old coffee. "Talk, now!" He pulled me behind the curtain. Security talked to the guy. He says he's the father of Marlene's daughter. Girl's 22, lives in Phoenix. I stared at him. "Marlene has a daughter?" Lou said. "That's what he claims." I said, "Look at that man's face and tell me he's lying." Lou was silent. "What do you want me to do?" I looked toward the stage. Nothing yet. One more song. My brain raced through every conversation I'd had with Marlene, and I found it. Night 4, hotel bar. She'd been staring into her drink. "Some choices you make when you're young, Dean. They don't go away, they grow up." I'd said, "What kind of choices?" She'd looked at me like she was deciding something. "The kind you can't take back, the kind that have a heartbeat." I'd said, "That's pretty deep for midnight." She'd smiled and changed the subject. I thought it was philosophy. It wasn't. Before I go on, you need to understand something about me. I had one rule. Other people's private lives are not my business. 20 years, never broken. One song left. The last of the last night. Marlene was holding it together like a glass filled to the rim. The band counted in slow. Lights dropped. 8 bars in, her voice broke. Full stop. She pressed her hand over her mouth. The band kept playing. I leaned close and whispered, "I've got you, kid, I've got you." I kept singing. Her part and mine made the duet a solo, right there in real time, and I took her hand. She whispered back, "Don't let go." I didn't. She squeezed so hard I felt the bones shift. Hold this moment. Freeze it. 2 people on stage, one singing, one silent, fingers locked, 600 strangers watching something none of them understand. My voice, a piano, and silence. That's it. Keep it. The song ended. Lights down. Standing ovation. We walked off, and behind the curtain she turned to me. "You know, don't you?" I said, "Tell me." She closed the dressing room door, sat in front of the mirror, mascara ruined. I was 19, Dean, no money, no career yet, no one who would help. Her voice cracked. "I had a baby girl, and I couldn't keep her." I sat across from her and didn't say a word. "I signed the paper," she said. "I let him take her. And I told myself every single day that it was the right thing," I said quietly. "You were a kid yourself." She shook her head. "Don't do that. Don't make it easier. I was old enough to know what I was doing." She wiped her face with both hands. 6 months ago, I got a letter. She found me. 22 years old, living in Phoenix. She wants to meet me. I said, "And you're scared?" She looked at me hard. "I'm terrified. What if she looks at me and sees a woman who threw her away?" I said, "Or what if she looks at you and sees the woman who gave her a better life than she could give herself?" She blinked. "You don't know that." I said, "Neither do you. That's the whole point." She pressed her palms against her eyes. "What if the press finds out? My career, everything I built." I leaned forward. "Kid, let me ask you something. If your career disappeared tomorrow, would you trade it for that phone call?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Then I said, "Who was the man at table 12? She stared at the mirror. "Her father. He's been coming every night. He wanted me to see his face, to remember what I did." I said, "The photograph he held up, what was it?" She closed her eyes. "Our daughter. She looks exactly like me, Dean. Same eyes, same mouth, exactly like me." I reached into my jacket, took out the envelope, set the tiny silver bird on the dressing table. She froze. "Where did you get that?" I said. "Paulie brought it during intermission. Someone left it at the stage door." She picked it up with trembling fingers and pressed it to her lips. "She sent this," Marlene whispered. A bird, because I used to sing to her. 3 days in the hospital before they took her, I sang to her every night, and I put this charm in her blanket, and she couldn't finish. I said, "It's the one missing from your bracelet, isn't it?" She nodded. I gave it to her 22 years ago so she'd have something of mine. Remember the bracelet, the empty loop at sound check? That's where the bird belonged. 22 years ago, Marlene tucked it into a blanket wrapped around a baby she thought she'd never hold again. Now it was sitting on a dressing table in Vegas. She held it like it was worth more than everything she'd ever earned. She looked up. "What do I do?" I said, "You call her." She shook her head. "I can't." I said, "You can." She said, "What if she hates me?" I leaned forward. "What if she doesn't?" She stared at me for a long time. "You make it sound simple." I said, "It is simple, kid. Simple and terrifying. You pick up a phone, dial the number, and tell her the truth." She called from a payphone in the lobby at 1:30 in the morning. Empty marble floors, dim light. I stood 10 feet away with a newspaper I wasn't reading. She dialed, waited, and I watched her grip the receiver so hard her knuckles went white. Then her lips moved. I couldn't hear the words. But after about a minute, her shoulders dropped. The tension left her body like steam. And then she laughed. A real laugh. First real sound I'd heard from her all night. She hung up and walked over to me. Her eyes were red, but her face was different, open, lighter. She cried, "Dean." I said, "Good tears or bad tears?" Marlene smiled. She said she's been waiting her whole life for that call. I folded my newspaper. "See? Simple." She punched me. "You're impossible," I said. "That's what Lou keeps telling me." I never played that room the same way. Every night after, I looked at the front row first, every face, because every seat holds someone carrying something invisible, most of them hoping you'll help them forget for an hour. That's the real job. But sometimes, pal, somebody doesn't need forgetting, they need remembering. Marlene didn't need a song, she needed 2 words. Call her. I've got other nights, louder ones, darker ones. One where Lou said afterward, "Dino, how are you still alive?" And I said, "Honestly, Lou, no idea. You want that story? Tell me in the comments." Marlene flew to Phoenix that Tuesday, met her daughter in a diner. They sat 4 hours and closed the place down. She called me that night. "Dean, she has my eyes." I said, "Of course she does, kid." That part was hers, but the part on stage where she held my hand and I sang for both of us, that was mine, and I'm glad I didn't let go.